Hey everyone, welcome to the final episode of SSF Zero to Hero, Servant of Arakaali, Poison SRS. After some more tinkering and even some tips in the comment section of Helmbreaker himself, we managed to pull out quite a good SSF viable build. Let's dive in. Let's start with the character overview. I am level 97, 5.7k life, around 80-81% elemental resistances, 78% chaos resistance cap, 66% block chance and 74% spell block chance, ailment immunity and 3 endurance charges. It's a very tanky build, which is why I made it to level 97. I am now blasting tier 16s with ease, killed a few conquerors, a few pinnacle bosses, but overall the idle endgame system in SSF is quite problematic. I'll get to that. It's also part of the reason that I'm ending the run. Last episode we were level 92 doing tier 11, so let's see what happens, shall we? Let's start with the gear. First, another pass on our flasks, which are still super scuffed. After using the vendor recipe to change enkindling orbs into instilling orbs, I can properly automate 3 flasks by crafting the charges on full craft. We find our first abyssal depths, and after an excruciatingly long boss fight, because my DPS is still pretty bad, we get a Darkness Enthroned. After using one of my 2 divines, it rolls at 83% and I'll take it. It's then time to craft some decent ghastly eye jewels using alteration orbs, and I'm just looking for flat life and flat minion chaos damage. Every now and then I get a small upgrade in terms of ghastly eye jewels, and every little bit helps. You see another small upgrade over here, but the bit of extra life and flat damage gets skilled, so it is significant if you add it all up. I'm trading a bunch of quality skill gems for gem cutter prisms to improve my gems. For example, here I am making my flash offering 2020, adding a few more percentage attack and movement speed for minions. I'm crafting a new wand that I found, and it's a small upgrade. I found another Darkness Enthroned, and this one is 92%, so a small upgrade from the 83%. I found another Forest Warrior, I don't have footage on it, but yeah, he joins the team again. And also I have a new 6th link that dropped, and this time it's uncorrupted. It's an evasion energy shield base, but it's still pretty decent. Using a Screaming Essence of Doubt, I rolled these great stats, and it's a big upgrade. More so, uncorrupted, so I can play around with the colors. I finish with a resistance benchcraft, quality and some eldritch currency, of which I still don't have a lot as I don't have access to altars at this point. I still haven't figured out the correct gem setup here, by the way, which I will fix later in the run. I keep running Abyss, and this time we get pretty lucky dropping an Amanamu's Gaze, a fabulous jewel for this build. 30% dot multi from minions is very nice. After slotting it in and a small respec, we now have 6 ghastly eye jewels. We replaced the stone golem that we were running for life regen with a chaos golem for physical damage reduction. I found a great bone ring upgrade from the ground, pretty good minion stats on this one. I dropped a Maloney, which is a quiver with 3 sockets, and a little later I also dropped a low level unique bow, which I decided to 6 socket using an omen, and then I used both in the offhands to be able to level 9 gems at once. That's 50% more efficiency of offhand gem leveling, which comes highly recommended. I'm trying to get a level 21 SRS for example, but no luck so far. I swap out some of the life regen nodes and invest in block, bringing spell block to a respectable 74%, just one shy of the block cap. I decided to get a Vaal Haste instead of faster attack support for shield charge. I also made some SRS support gem changes in accordance with Helmbreaker's early mapping loadout, and here you see the build in action after that. It's pretty smooth. Also I dropped 3 6 links here, which I don't use. I'm at this point doing tier 14 plus maps, so I have some eldritch currency. Time to upgrade the gear a bit, with fizz damage taken as something else, some max res, the good stuff. I do another round of upgrading flasks as well, including full automation again, and this time I also have the baubles required to put quality on my flasks. I trade in old quality flasks to get a few more baubles. And back to Abyss, where boss killing has improved significantly, and then we drop this little beauty. Doesn't get much better than this. It also means I'm mostly done with Abyss and I will spec into something else. The next full quality using GCP is Purity of Elements, another 5% rest for me and my little minions. Our last and final upgrade are these gloves, and after a little bit of crafting I want to swap them. I am actually fully aware that my gloves hold the specters, including the Forest Warrior, but I was convinced that his corpse would appear as soon as the gem is gone. And that doesn't seem to be the case. So again, we lost our Forest Warrior, probably to my own mistake. I'm not sure how you can change him safely. Maybe you take out the gem, not the item or something. But either way, it sucks, because these guys don't show up in Ritual often at all. This is the only one I had. Losing the Forest Warrior again also made me decide to quit this run. It's a bit disheartening, honestly. Up next, game progression. I managed to get 2 Void Stones by killing the Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds, but I didn't get much more after that. It's fine for map sustain, assuming you have a few idols that increase map drops, but not having the Atlas passive tree is a big loss, even more so in SSF. There are a few issues with the idol system, but I will list 3 here that particularly hurt in SSF. First, there's the fact it's complete RNG. I figured out certain mods roll on certain idol base types, but that doesn't help much if you can't influence these things in any way. They're unmodifiable, which is a big issue. Second, while there are 4 mods on these idols, usually half of them are dead mods. In the Atlas passive tree, this almost never happens. Every node you take has some value, but with these idols you get modifiers for or chance to get leak mechanics you don't want to run. It's super rare to have an idol with 3 good modifiers, and I don't have a single one I think with 4 good mods on it, despite a quad tab full of them. Third, because of the 2 points above, it's incredibly hard to find synergy in the endgame system, and several leak mechanics without synergistic nodes are complete trash. Stuff like Harbinger, Breach, Beyond and Legion are really bad without investment. Others, such as Ritual, are doable or Betrayal, but it's far from fun, and Maven progression without the Maven nodes, which I never managed to find on an idol, is just way too tedious and unfun. It's pretty rough all in all. Once we can make private leagues, however, with these ascendancies and the normal Atlas passive tree, we should be in for an amazing time. I managed to get close to Atlas completion, finding the Coward's Trail for example in Kirac missions. Also that's something you simply don't get, Kirac missions, which is very problematic. I killed a few Guardians and Conquerors but never even attempted Elder or Cirrus or Maven. I do have a Shaper kill for you to see a bit of the single target damage without a Forest Warrior even. It's quite solid, and mapping with melee splash works fine too. We continue with the Animate Guardian adventures, starting with some more shenanigans as I thought this double block setup would be fun using Advancing Fortress and Centauri's Answer, and it actually works. My AG blocks often and curses a bunch of enemies. A little later he gets Ambush Charge, which didn't seem to do a whole lot. A Ritual drops Cosprey's Will, which seems like a decent item for this guy as well, so I will be gifting him that one. My old friend Victario dropped again, so time to equip that bad boy for more frenzy charges and maybe power charges for the minion army. I made a few changes in my loot filter so that certain decent Animate Guardian uniques would show up in the form of div cards. The Wake of Destruction and Blood Bond have common divination cards, so here I'm turning those in. I also gave him a nice special stash tab for when he dies as a backup. The moment I have more copies of unique items, I start corrupting them, and the corrupted implicits also work on the Animate Guardian. From a nameless seer, we finally get a Dying Breath for a bit more army damage, which is great, but that's it for the Animate Guardian in this series. He's ultimately wearing a Joffrey's helmet for resistances, the Dying Breath, the Cosprey's Will, a Wake of Destruction for shock round, and I think these are the Snakebite gloves for really no apparent reason. They do some poison damage. For quite some time, I was struggling a bit with how to progress the build. In SSF, when you're unfamiliar with a build, that sometimes happens, to me at least. Fortunately, Helmbreaker himself went into the comments section and provided some updates. He updated his own POB and guide and suggested I made a few changes too. Those were some great suggestions and I basically started following his build again, link in the description. The main mistake I made was to try and get minion poison hit chance capped without using chance to poison, and then use other support gems such as Void Manipulation, which I saw in one of Gazi's loadouts. That turned out to be a pretty bad idea. You can use the Darkness Enthroned to cap the poison chance, but the main mistake I'm making here is not realizing how much flat chaos damage your minions are losing out on if you do this. And Helmbreaker's guide had both added chaos damage support and chance to poison support, which also has added chaos damage, which once I swapped to made a huge difference. This build really feels good to play without much investment. Let's do a proper overview of the skill updates, as I made a few changes since last episode. SRS is now supported by Chance to Poison, Unleash, minion damage, melee splash and added chaos damage. For single target, I swapped melee splash for multi-strike. Auras and trigger wand are unchanged from the last episode. The golem in the shield is new, it's now a chaos golem for physical damage reduction. I also put in the despair curse over there, which helps a bit with the damage. The boots have Vile Haste, which I press whenever it's up, shield charge, frost blink and convocation. For gear we ultimately ended up with an okay trigger wand, and you can see I never even got exalted orbs to further upgrade this. We have the shield from last episode as well as the helmet, which now has some good eldritch implicits, rings with a lot of life, resistances and some minion stats, the 6 link from this episode, the gloves that cost me my forest warrior, the 99% darkness enthroned, jewels with more flat added chaos from minions, plus even a bit of accuracy, so I could drop the passive node, and the boots are the same since last episode. Flasks, I have a life one against corrupted blood. I don't take tons of damage, so I don't need an instant life flask here. I like a quartz flask for phasing, also because I ended up with some evasion gear because of SSF. I actually have 33% spell suppression chance with the flask up. That's not bad at all. The rest of the flasks are movement and armor, synergizing with the determination buff. I do lack some flat armor though because of that evasion gear that I put on. The passive tree hardly changed since last time except for one thing, which is the small cluster jewel over here. I used to have a determination reservation one, and now I have a one that gives me endurance charges on block. I will post the path of building so you can have a look at the tree, the gear, etc. Just don't expect the DPS to be correct, I'm not even attempting to show that. But it feels like a few million based on the mapping and shaper experience. And in Helmbreaker's PoE it is a few million, like 3 million or so, and because of my gear I must be fairly close to that number. For the gear I'm wearing, and the fact it's SSF, definitely a viable build for a League Start scenario. With these ascendancies, that is, of course. I think I'll make a separate video discussing the build itself, doing an SSF review video. Should be interesting, but it's not for this series. I hope you had a good time watching the final episode. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions or if I made any errors. Subscribe and like for more PoE SSF content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.